Hello everyone, welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host Paula Taylor and this is episode 118. So my other exciting announcement is that my site is now set up. My website, paulataylorenergy.com, is set up to book online for all services. So virtual services have been set up for a while that way, but now you can actually book in-person services as well on the website, paulataylorenergy.com. You can go to the book online tab. And if you like the show, if you like the topics we talk about, if you like the meditations, if you want to delve further into any of these topics, booking a one-on-one session with me is a great idea. I can work with you energetically. We can do intuitive reading. It's interesting how it happens that sometimes you might have a question or two about something I said, and then that ends up kind of leading us into some energy work and some other things. And I have different services on the website. You can always just pick a service, but a lot of times things kind of bleed into each other because I just go with the flow intuitively as to what I think serves the highest good, or what my intuition is telling me serves the highest good in that situation. So I'm excited to finally be offering that, and we'll probably remind you of that again. And then, as always, if you are liking the show or the podcast, please support me in some way. You can rate the podcast anywhere you're listening to podcasts. You can like and comment on the Facebook video. And of course, you can support me financially through the website, paulataylorenergy.com. Go to the podcast link, or there's two links in the show notes for the podcast. And then last announcement is that last week I announced my brand new Patreon community. I'm so excited about this. The rebirthing ceremony that I mentioned last week is now there on Patreon for you. That I said that was going to be my first offering. And it's $5 a month. There's a link here in the video, and then there will be a link in the show notes for the podcast. I'm really excited about building this intentional community. I see us communicating a lot in that space. So if you're not in a space where you feel like a one-on-one service is right for you, or financially you're not there, join us in the Patreon space, because we're going to be doing some group Zooms. I'm going to be doing some Q&As. I'm going to be offering services there that you can't get anywhere else, including possibly discounts on some of the classes that I have in mind for this year, which I'm going to mention a little bit, I think, in this show as we talk about some things tonight. So lots of things going on. I'm very excited. But I've been having a little bit of anxiety, and we're going to talk about that tonight. So tonight we're going to talk about working with the energy of anxiety. And we've talked about anxiety multiple times in the past, but I've never done a show dedicated to it. And there's a couple of different reasons why we're doing this tonight. My brain is getting ahead of my tongue. So first of all, I've had a couple of really good conversations recently with different people about what is energy work? What does that even mean? And I think there's a little bit of a misconception out there about what energy work is. And, I think I did this Reiki 1 class, this refresh of my attunement. I went through the class with my friend Michelle at Brightway Wellness, who's an amazing Reiki teacher. And so we were talking about, feeling energy, which I've done on the show before. I'm rubbing my hands together if you're listening to the podcast. And this idea of what energy, the direct experience of energy feels like: feeling heat, feeling cold, feeling tingles, having this kind of sense that there's some sort of movement within your body or in the space around your body. And absolutely, that is energy work. Directly sensing energy is one of the things that, especially as you develop that skill, you most likely will eventually develop some sort of way to directly sense energy. And it's a little bit different for each person. But that's not it. That's not all. That's not the only way to work with energy. And in fact, everything we do is energy work. And I'm really passionate about this. And I got into a conversation the other day with someone, and we were talking about this. And I said, if you are practicing meditation, you are doing energy work. If you are setting intention, you are doing energy work. If you are becoming aware of parts of your body that maybe you forgot were there, coming down into your body, that is energy work. That is bringing energy down into your body. If you are chanting, if you are singing with intention, that is energy work. If you are doing movement with intention, if you're practicing things like Qigong, the whole point of that is moving energy. So you don't have to directly feel the energy to work with it. And eventually you probably will. Again, this is a practice like anything else. And so I've been doing this for 20 years. And so, yep, I feel energy. I can feel the energy in my own body. I can feel it in other people's body. I can feel it across distance. I can tell if there's holding or stagnation or a blockage. I am a professional. That is what I do for a living, which is why I like when people come to me and I can help them. But I am also extremely passionate about teaching people how to work with their own energy. It's why I wrote my book, Spiritual Integration. And one of the things that I think is coming this year is an intro to working with your own energy course. I don't know what it'll be called exactly, but I realized I wrote that book specifically as a practical guide for people to work with their own energy. But if you've ever done that before, doing that without any guidance is difficult. And so my plan is to do this course and actually use my own book as the textbook. Read through the book chapter by chapter, go through it with you, help you answer questions, go through the process of learning how to move this energy in your body. Because I will tell you, it is the most important thing you could learn. It is something that we should be teaching everyone because it is the foundation for your health on all levels. The movement and flow of energy in and around your body and how you interact with energy in the world around you is the foundation of your physical health, of your mental health, and of your emotional health. So again, this is something that should be taught in school, and maybe someday it will be, but it's imperative to learn to work with your own energy. And that is the whole point of this show, honestly. The meditations we do every week, that is energy work. If you've ever done one of my guided meditations, you are doing self-energy work on yourself. You are doing self-healing energy work on yourself. And so let go of that misconception that you have to necessarily feel and know exactly. You know, when I give you a visualization, a lot of times I'll say, maybe you're not feeling anything, but come back to this because you will. I promise you at some point you will feel something. And again, it may just be this sensation of, oh, heck, I got feet. I forgot I had feet down there. I actually can feel my feet. That is energy work. One of the reasons that working with energy is so important is that emotions are energy. Every emotion that we have is carried in our body, is stored in our body in an energetic way as energy. And so once you start to understand that, you can start to work with emotion. You can understand emotion. It seems less overwhelming. It seems less like it's kind of leading the way for you. You get to a point where you can say, oh, hey, this is just energy and I know how to work with energy. So let me tell you, I just gave my story away, but let me tell you my story about why we're talking about anxiety today. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I have a lot going on. I had surgery, as anybody who's watched or listened to anything recently knows. I'm just about 3 months out of that surgery. So I had this downtime, and then it was like I went from downtime to like everything happening all at once time. I went back to my medical job. I opened my business. I had my open houses. I have massage credentialing coming due this year. So I have courses every weekend this month that I'm attending. I've been teaching courses. It's just been a little bit chaotic, to be honest, especially when you add it to the fact that I'm still recovering from surgery. And then on top of all of that, if you've watched the last few episodes, you know that I recently got diagnosed with ADHD and I started taking medication for that. And that is completely changed my energetic body. It's completely changed my energetic body. And I'm going to explain why, or how, I guess, because it is completely tied in with anxiety. So before I went on this medication for ADHD, and I've talked about this before, and I've talked about it in the episode, I think the last few episodes, I had what I've been calling mental static. I had anxiety that was being held in my mental body. And if you're watching the video, you can see me, I'm actually like flapping my hands. I'm shaking my hands around my head, because that is what the energy of anxiety is. The energy of anxiety is just excess energy. That's what anxiety is. And we're going to get into kind of a little more of what I think goes on underneath anxiety and how to work with that. But essentially, anxiety is excess energy. So if you're carrying anxiety in the mental space, what that looks like to an energy worker like me is I can feel that vibration. I can feel that kind of shaking around the head. And a lot of the people I've worked with who have ADHD have that kind of mental anxiety going on, that mental pattern of energy. And how that manifests in your mental space, or at least how it did for me, and I think for many other people, is kind of racing thoughts, being unable to let go of thoughts, being indecisive, having obsessions, like being unable to kind of move from topic to topic, staying awake, having a hard time falling asleep. So all of these things are symptoms of that kind of mental excess energy that we're going to call anxiety. And not to get totally off topic here, but, we have sort of, the other day I said something about like I have purple in my hair, and we collectively decided to call that purple. It's just what we named it. So these emotions that we have named are basically just energy. And so when you think about it in those terms, it becomes a little bit less daunting. So I keep interrupting my own story. Do I have ADHD? I don't know. So what happened to me was I went on that medication for ADHD, and the mental energy, essentially, that what I figured out now, it took me a little while to figure out what was going on, came back down into my physical body. But it's still excessive energy. There's still an excess of energy. So what was an excess of mental energy, racing thoughts, all of these kind of worrying, things like that, and now I am experiencing in my body as what I would call physical anxiety. And physical anxiety tends to manifest with symptoms like chest pain. Sometimes people think they're actually having a heart attack. To me, it feels like I feel the energy of it. It feels like there's excess energy in my kind of chest and heart space. But physically, what you might feel is the sense that your heart is racing, even if it's not, shortness of breath, even tightening of the chest. You can have anxiety symptoms in the belly. There's a reason we use terms like nervous stomach or nervous bladder even. So the excess of that energy presents as sometimes people vomit from being anxious, or they have diarrhea, or you might pee a lot. And again, nervous bladder, there's a reason that term kind of came. So generally, in most people, the anxiety is carried in the body from the chest up. And the reason for that is that most of us are not grounded. We're not well grounded in our body. And so what happened when I've been having these symptoms of kind of, again, to me right away, I know it's excess energy in my chest. That's what it feels like. And what I label it as is the emotion of anxiety, because again, collectively as a society, we've kind of decided to call that anxiety. And it feels a little bit like there's something I'm supposed to be doing, and maybe I've forgotten about it, or I'm not doing it, or I should be moving more. Like there's a sense of urgency about it that absolutely fits with anxiety. And so I started checking in with my guides. As if you recall, one of the reasons I got into all of this, especially the ADHD diagnosis, was to have better communication with my guides, and I do now. So I was like, this is really uncomfortable. I don't think I like this. Maybe I shouldn't be on this medication. And they said to me, this is just energy, and you know how to work with energy. And as soon as they said that, I was like, oh yeah, I do. I know how to work with excess energy. I know how to work with anxiety. I need to ground it through my body. I need to redistribute this energy to the rest of my energetic container. Sometimes we need to make our container bigger so it can hold more energy when we do have an influx of energy. That happens very frequently when you start doing energy work and you receive kind of these downloads, or sometimes people call them up leveling, or, like if you get a Reiki attunement or a DFE activation, you get this new energy, and then it's like you've got to make these adjustments in your energetic field, which includes your body, in order to integrate this new energy. So they said to me, oh, this is just energy and you know what to do with energy. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And it's a little bit easier said than done, right? It's a new practice for me, or it's not a new practice. It's a completely new way of being. Instead of that energy being in my head, which was uncomfortable. This is the other thing. And we talk a lot about trauma, and all of these things are linked. So sometimes the discomfort that we're used to, we forget is discomfort, because it's our comfortable discomfort zone. So having all of that worry and that mental energy was absolutely uncomfortable, but it was a discomfort I had grown accustomed to because I had it my entire life. So at a certain point, it was like, oh, that's just how I'm made. I'm just always going to be kind of struggling with this. So sometimes coming into a new discomfort zone, stepping out of our old discomfort zone, not even a comfort zone. I mean, it's a comfort zone in that it's familiar. This discomfort was familiar to me. The new discomfort that I'm having in my body, in my chest, is less familiar to me, and so it feels scarier. It feels more uncomfortable. Even though it's still discomfort, it's not more uncomfortable, it's just new and different. And in fact, it's a good sign that my energy the excess energy has moved down, because I can keep moving it down and ground it. And that is one of the best ways to work with anxiety. So let's talk a little bit about anxiety and the energy of anxiety, just a little bit more in general. So as I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking about the fact that anxiety itself is not really an emotion. And in fact, anxiety a lot of times is a wake-up call. It's a sign that there's an emotion underneath that needs to be looked at. So the anxiety comes up and it's like, what's underneath this anxiety? Like for me, recently, what's underneath the anxiety is a lot of fear about what feels like this kind of chaotic shift in my schedule. You know, am I going to be well enough physically to handle these additional tasks? Am I going to do a good job in my business? Am I going to have people show up for my classes and in-person, events and one-on-one services? So there's fear underneath the anxiety. But that's not the only thing that anxiety masks. And we're going to get into this a little bit because I think it's important. So underneath the anxiety could be almost any other emotion. Loneliness, feeling alone, feeling empty. A lot of times, all of our kind of struggle comes from this sort of feeling that there's a hole in us that needs to be filled, and we try to fill it with lots of things, but the only thing it can be filled with is energy, is learning how to move the energy, is learning how to integrate energy, is learning how to flow with energy. So when we're filling this hole with other things, it brings up a lot of emotions. So anxiety could be hiding almost anything. Anger, which is really another mask for hurt. There's a reason I use the term excavation when I'm talking about emotion. So I'm feeling anxious. What's underneath that? Oh, well, I'm feeling fear. Well, what's the fear about? Oh, it's about, the future of my business, let's say. So it could be anything. What's underneath my anxiety? It's anger. What's the anger covering up? Well, it's hurt because this member of my family did this to me, or whatever it is. And I think that absolutely anxiety and addiction are linked. And we haven't talked much about addiction on this show. Maybe we should do a whole show on that sometime. But I do want to mention that I think spiritually the way that addiction works is that most people who have an addiction, and you could be addicted to anything. I'm not just talking about substances. I mean, there are people who are addicted to quote unquote good things like exercise or work or, I don't know, taking care of their family instead of themselves. That's actually a big one if you're a woman, right? Caretaking for others instead of yourself is an addiction. And what is happening there energetically and spiritually? So what is happening with addiction energetically and spiritually is that a lot of times there's something we don't want to see. And a lot of times it could be shame, which is a great secret hider. We talked about that recently. I think we're going to do a whole show on that at some point. It can be trauma, and trauma triggers things like shame. So what happens with addiction is there's something that we are pushing down or pushing behind us, something we don't want to see energetically, an emotion we don't want to feel. And emotions are not meant to be held. They are meant to flow. They are meant to be released. So what happens when you're holding on to an emotion, when it's getting stored in your body, you start getting physical symptoms sometimes for sure. But also what happens is that you start getting this feeling of anxiety because the emotion wants to come up. The emotion wants to be processed, and you're pushing it down, or you're pushing it back behind you in the energetic body. And so the energy starts bouncing around, and it starts creating this anxiety, this excess energy, because this one little emotion down here can't get out, and it's going like this, and it's causing waves, essentially, waves of energy. And so what happens if you have an addiction, and you will probably recognize this if you're aware, you have to kind of be aware about this, but what happens is this anxiety builds and builds and builds, and your coping mechanism for pushing everything back down again is to use or partake in the behavior or substance or whatever it is that you're addicted to. So as somebody who's had issues with food in the past, I can say that I could feel that pressure building, and then I might eat something that produces some dopamine and oxytocin, and like, oh, okay, whew, it releases that pressure. It seems like it releases that pressure. It kind of tamps things down. But the problem with it is that it's temporary. And the other problem with it is that the reason addictions get worse as you go is because that anxiety loop keeps getting worse. So this emotion, whatever it is, this memory wants to be released. It wants to be processed. It wants to flow back out of your system. It doesn't want to be there anymore, but you're keeping it there because the fear of experiencing it is so much that you'd rather just keep it down, and you don't realize in the process you're actually hurting yourself more. So every time you go through that cycle, the anxiety around that gets worse. And so you have to start using more of the substance or the behavior or whatever it is to keep trying to tamp that down. So from an energetic, spiritual perspective, one of the ways to deal with addiction is to start dealing with the anxiety, which oftentimes means figuring out what's underneath the anxiety. And that is really difficult. That is hard work. That is work that requires a coach, a mental health professional, somebody who can really help you identify, because whatever it is so scary that it's caused you to build entire systems around it. I mean, again, I thought that this mental static, this mental anxiety was part of my personality. I just thought it was part of who I was. And then I took about 3 pills. I guess it took a few days just to kind of get adjusted a little bit. And then it was like, oh, wait a minute. That wasn't part of who I was. That was a physiological part of who I was, but energetically now, that has changed the energy to something that for me is far more workable. It's actually easier to work with energy in the body than it is to work with energy in the mental space. And that's why anxiety is so difficult to work with energetically. There's a few reasons. So anxiety is this energy that's bouncing around. And if you think of, we don't want to get too much into energetic anatomy, but essentially you're in a container, right? You're in a physical container, and then within that container, there's energetic flow everywhere. There's meridians, that's a Chinese medicine, view of it. There's chakras, that's the Ayurvedic and Hindu kind of view of things. So you've got energy flowing throughout your body, within your body. You've got energy around your body in layers. And so essentially you're a container. And so you've got this energy bouncing around, and there's a couple different ways you can deal with it. You can make your container bigger. We're going to do a little bit of that in the meditation tonight. And sometimes we've got a restriction, just like you have restrictions of muscles in your body, and you might see a massage therapist, we can have a restriction of these spaces in and around our body so that the energy does get stuck. That's essentially what happens. And then it's bouncing around, it has nowhere to go. So really what we're looking for is, I focus all the time in the meditation on this downward flow, right? And part of the reason I do that, there's an upward flow as well. I mean, really, we're flowing down, we're flowing up. There should be a side to side flow. There's kind of movement in your entire energetic field when we are healthy and balanced. But for most of us, because we live in such a mentally oriented society, we talked about that a couple episodes ago, the energy is just getting stuck in our head. And the analogy that I use, and I used it recently, is it's like we have this big, beautiful house with a basement, 3 floors, and an attic, and we're just living in the attic. So if you think about that, let's stick with that analogy because I like it. Let's say you have 5 people in your family and they're all stuck in this tiny little attic. What's going to happen? There's going to be a lot of chaos, right? You're going to start getting angry at each other and you're not going to have enough space, and the energy is going to start bouncing around. So then, oh, wait a minute. Like in my case, that energy came out of the attic, but it's still only on the 2nd floor because it's kind of stuck at the chest level now. So it's got a little more space to move around. It can kind of move around in the attic and that 2nd floor, but it still feels restrictive. So as we ground energy, as we bring energy down through the body, oh, wait a minute, now I've got a 1st floor, now I've got a basement, then I've got this big, beautiful yard and acreage around my body. Think about how much more space there is for the energy to move. So the bouncing of the energy slows down as we use more of our space, as we expand our field, both within and around our bodies. And then the other reason that grounding is so important is that I say this all the time, we're in a physical body for a reason, right? We are connected to the earth, and the earth is a beautiful transmuter of energy. So we can develop that flow down into the earth. We can ground some of that excess energy down into the earth with the intention for the highest good, if we're doing it intentionally, because we want the earth to have beautiful energy to use, right, to heal itself and support us. And then we can draw in that earth energy back up, and that energy is very stable energy. It's dark and grounded, and it's like digging your feet into soil or sand. There's that feeling that you feel connected to something. And that immediately, one of the ways they treat anxiety is to have you start grounding yourself into your environment, naming objects around you, feeling your body against surfaces, feeling your feet on the floor, because energetically you are bringing that excess energy that's bouncing around, you're bringing down through the body. So it's bouncing less because there's more space. And then you can actually release some of it into the earth. And then, of course, as you expand out into the fields around your body, there's more space. And the other analogy I like to use about this is the idea that if I go into a closet with a little bouncy ball and I throw the ball, it's going to go ping, 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 back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. If I go into a football stadium and I throw that bouncy ball, it might not even actually come back to me because there's so much more space for it to move. So that is how we deal with the energy of anxiety. We take this excess energy that's bouncing around because it doesn't have enough space, and we give it more space to move. We release what's not serving us, and we expand again to give it more space to move. So coming down through the body has 2 purposes. You're expanding your space that way. You're letting go, and then as you expand out beyond your body, you're giving it even more space to move around. And what is my favorite way to work with energy, especially to work with your own energy, and especially to work with anxiety? It is, perhaps unsurprisingly, sound. Because when you are in the midst of that anxiety attack, if you've ever had like a panic attack, visualization's not really going to work very well. You need something that works without you having to think about it. And that is how sound works. The vibration of the sound moves the energy for you, so you don't have to do it intentionally. You have to make the sound intentionally. Like there's a way to do the sound. And if you're watching the video, I keep going from my head down. So you may have practiced a version of what we're going to do in the meditation today, which is chanting for anxiety. It's my favorite way to work with anxiety. And it is because it is easily accessible and it does not require you to be in a space of thought. You can do this in a blind panic. Everybody can use their voice. And as I always say with vocal work, that's another one of the classes that's coming this year, is awakening your authentic voice, learning how to work with your voice. Not necessarily for singing or chanting, although that's part of the way that we open the voice, but even just to speak up for yourself or to be able to speak in front of other people. It's so important. The voice vibrates the entire body. Every week I say, we're going to do this oxytocin breath and we're going to use an audible ha because it vibrates the vagus nerve and that tells the body to come out of that fight, flight, or freeze and into the ease response. So the vibration of your own voice is an extremely powerful healer, and it's also an extremely powerful relational tool with other people. When you are sitting in your authentic voice, people will listen. People will hear you better. So when we're working with anxiety, we're going to use the voice, and we're going to use my favorite chant for this, which is Sat Nam. You hear me do this probably almost every week. It's SATNAM. That is a Kundalini chant or phrase that just means truth is your identity. And I love it because it's short, it's simple, it's easy to remember. And the way we're going to chant is we're going to chant Sat, and then we're going to come down on Nam, and then we're going to keep coming down. But I want you to do this for yourself, and I'm going to guide you through this. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do, and you can start thinking about it now before we get into the meditation, where is the anxiety in your body? Is it in the mental space? Is it in the chest? Is it in the belly? Where do you feel it in your body? And if you don't feel it in your body, don't worry, we're going to go down through the whole body anyway. But the reason I want you to pay attention to that is because we're going to start by finding the pitch where our anxiety is. And what do I mean by that? So when I feel my anxiety, as I've said, I feel it in my chest. I feel it kind of in my heart space. And if I start making a sound, I can make the sound go up and down, and you can actually and you can do this anywhere. You can do this on your head if you're doing the mental space. We'll go through each one, I think, on your chest or on your belly. And as you make a sound, we'll start with the chest because I think it's the easiest. You're going to feel underneath your hand, you're going to feel more vibration when you get to the pitch that works for you. And it's different for every single person. So like if I go, ah, like that, I feel more in my head. That's high for me. So I'm going to bring that down. Ah, that I feel in the throat. Like I can put my hand here and feel my hand vibrating. Ah, now I feel it a little bit here. Ah, there it is, right there. My whole hand is vibrating. So when I say that sound is vibration, you can physically feel the vibration. Ah, then I'm going to try it for my belly. Ah, that one's a little harder to feel with your hand. You have to sense a little more inside your body, I think. Ooh, there it is. It's a more subtle vibration. If you're looking for it in the head, there I feel it in the head. So what we're going to do in the meditation is we're going to start high and come down. Sat Nam, Sat Nam, Sat Nam. And again, this is not at all about pitch. This is not at all about how your voice sounds. This is not about aesthetics. And in fact, when you're working with chant and energy work, when you hear those little bobbles in your voice, that is actually the energy moving. That is the vibration of your voice moving energy. So if you sound like, yeah, that's actually a good thing. And the longer you chant, the more you'll find that that starts to go away and you get a really pure sounding tone that doesn't have as many of those bobbles in it. But there's no judgment about any of that. It's not like more bobbles is bad and less is good. It's just a way to kind of see the progress that you're making. I sing all the time. I chant all the time. I get little bobbles in my voice. It just is there. It's not something that we're trying to get rid of. It's just a way to kind of notice that this is actually moving the energy in your body. So I want you to find your own pitch. And as I said, we're going to start at the head, and I'll stay there because I'm going to do this obviously for you. If you're in a place where you can't make noise, do this sometime when you can, and I guarantee you that it will help. I have never not had this help when I'm dealing with anxiety or just needing to get grounded, needing to get connected to the earth. So we're going to start kind of in that head space. And again, your pitch might be totally different than mine. So I'm going to have you actually put your hand, where we're at. We're going to do the head. We're going to do through the throat. We're going to do through the chest. And then as you come back again and practice this, which I highly encourage you to do, wherever you feel the anxiety the most in your body is the place you want to stay. So I might do 1 or 2 satnams in my head because my head feels calm. But when I get to the chest, I might do 6 or 7 on the same pitch over and over again. I might alter it a little bit too as I feel that energy kind of moving. And as you practice this, you'll start to feel like, there'll be a little bit of a release, and that is kind of the signal. Okay, I can now come down further into the body. So you always want, for this exercise, starting high and coming low is the whole point. The vibrations are up here, they're vibrating, we're bringing them down, we're bringing them down, we're bringing them down, and finally we're going to get all the way down to the feet, and then we're going to intentionally kind of release that into the earth and then do a little bit of expansion with some DFE tones just to kind of help seal that in, to help move that energy, to reintegrate that energy is essentially what we're doing. We're taking that excess energy, we're bringing it down, we're expanding it out, we're releasing what's not serving us. Whew, and you might want to have some water with you for this. The other thing I will say, when you're working with the voice, especially if you've got some crud going on energetically in your throat, which most of us do, you might start coughing. That's normal. That's okay. Like, let it happen, but you might need a little bit of water. You might find your voice, again, kind of cracking or hearing little bobbles in your voice. Again, let go of the judgment about the quality of your voice. Eventually, if you want to work with the quality of your voice, this is a good way to start opening this stuff. This is one of the ways. Chant is the first way I started reopening my throat after I physically lost my voice because I had nodules on my vocal cords, and for years I was really pinched and could barely really talk, and I was always hoarse, which is funny. I just redid this Reiki attunement after 20 years, and the first thing that happened was that I kind of started losing my voice, and then I realized it was part of the cleanse of this. I've got some stuff to release, so let's do that together in this meditation today. So let's meditate together. So for this meditation, sit up if you can. This is a very active meditation, and whenever we're using the voice, we want to have good posture. We want our voice box to be, we want everything to be kind of stretched out. So if you're sitting up, try to sit up straight. If you're doing this hunched over, it's actually going to affect kind of the movement. We want as much movement as we can bring here. So we want to be open. You want your throat to be open. So if anything, you want to tip your chin up a little bit as you do this. Not too extremely, but if you tip your throat down, you can hear, like, I have my chin tipped down and my voice sounds totally different than when I open my throat physically that way. So get comfortable, get supported, but try to sit up straight here. And you can do this lying down. You'll also be straight lying down, but you have a little bit more belly support and diaphragmatic support actually if you're sitting up, because there's something kind of your bottom is supporting up against either a chair or the ground. So let's take just 1 to 3 deep oxytocin breaths just to come into this space of meditation. And in fact, that's a little bit of a warm-up for the chant. So do that A couple more times, breathe in through the nose, let your belly float out, and then sigh that breath out with that audible ha sound. And then we're going to start chanting a long sat and a short nam. You're going to go higher on the sat and lower on the nam. Sat nam, sat nam. The interval there, you can hear my bowls vibrating. The interval there does not matter as much as the fact that you're just starting higher and going lower. And each time we move, we're going to move the whole thing down. So sat nam, sat nam, sat nam. We're going to keep going down. So to begin, let's put your hands on your head, on the top of your head, on your forehead. If it's accessible, if it's not, or if it's really uncomfortable, you can just kind of send your awareness there. But actually, if you have your hands on your forehead, you'll probably feel the vibration of your voice when you get to the right pitch. So it might take a little bit of experimentation. So take a little time. Just make some oohs like I just did and feel what it feels like in your hand on the forehead there. And then there's really no right or wrong here. If you're off, if you're not exactly in the space, it doesn't really matter. This is just an exercise to help you start recognizing where you feel this vibration in your body. So when you come back to this, you can come back to the pitch that is going to be the most effective. But we always want to start high and work our way down anyway. So I'm going to start doing my sat nams. I'll probably do 3 to 4 in each place, maybe less. We'll see how it's kind of feeling intuitively. You can do this as many times as you'd like. You can stay on one pitch as many times as you'd like. And I encourage you, again, do this out loud at some point, even if you can't do it right now. So the other thing, whenever you're chanting, just like for the oxytocin breath, you want to take a nice big breath in with the belly. You can actually maybe put one hand on your belly and one hand on your head here. As you breathe in, you really want to feel that belly float out. You're bringing that air all the way down to the belly. That's the visualization here. So you're going to take a big breath in, and then on one long out breath, you're going to chant the long sat and the short nam. And if you need to listen to me a few times before you start, that's completely fine. I'm going to start somewhere around my head space here. Sat nam. Sat So as we move down, you might move your hands down the side of your face, just kind of finding the pitch in each area here, feeling the vibration. Sat nam. Sat nam. Coming to the throat now. Sat nam. Sat nam. And to the top of the chest. Sat nam. Sat nam. Center of the chest. Sat nam. Let's do one more there. Sat Nam. You may also notice these lengthen as you get this energy starting to ground. It'll be easier to sing a longer note. Coming down to the top of the belly now. Sat Nam. Sat Nam. You might feel the vibration more through your back if it's physically accessible for you to put a hand on your back as well as on your belly. Coming down a little bit to the middle of the belly. Sat Nam. Sat Nam. The low belly, the top of the pelvis now. Sat Nam. Sat Nam. Now we're coming down the thighs toward the knees. Sat Nam. Sat Nam. And now this is more of a visualization, but try to feel your feet vibrate as you do this lowest one. This is about the lowest sound you can make with your body. Sat Nam. Sat Nam. Let's do two more of those, and I can actually feel the bottom of my feet vibrating. See if you can feel any vibration in your feet here. Sat Nam. Sat Nam. And then just notice any shifts in the way you feel. Do you feel more connected to your low body? Do you feel less anxious or less energy bouncing around, moving around in the upper body? Set the intention now, and you can state this out loud if you'd like. I release any energy which no longer serves me into the earth for the highest good. And we'll say that again. I release any energy that no longer serves me into the earth for the highest good. If you're in an extremely anxious state when you start this work, this may be as far as you want to go. And you can do this multiple times, starting high and coming down the body with those satnams. You might do 6 or 7 in each place before you move down, or you might do 2 or 3 and then start all over again. But you will notice a shift. This vibration will make a shift if you stick with it. And the more you practice this, the more your body will respond, because it will recognize the tones and it'll say, oh, I know what to do here. I know to bring this energy down, to let this energy go. So the last step, if you want to move on here, is to extend beyond the physical body into these energetic layers that exist beyond the physical body. And so for this, we're just going to use visualization, and then I'm going to do some toning that will help the vibrations in your space. Just encourage a little bit of stretch. It's like we're stretching the body, but we're actually stretching the energetic field. You can take your hands and kind of pluck next to your body and pull out to the side. This is called etheric stretching. It's a beautiful way to kind of stretch this energy out. And as long as you're doing this with intention, the energy is responding. Whether you feel anything or not, what what you might feel is just a little more expanded, a little more open. Maybe you're breathing easier. Maybe you feel calmer. So you can continue to do that. You can move your arms around in this space. It's a beautiful way to start to move energy. Just kind of waving the arms gently around the body. You can just push the arms out to the side and imagine that you're just making this beautiful bubble that you're sitting in just that much bigger and that much more beautiful. Or you can just be still, whatever feels good. We're going to do a little bit of toning here. Just to seal all this working, you're going to hear some high to low sounds. That's the onyx frequency bringing energy down. And then you're going to just hear some expanded kind of moving tones to get that expansion in the space beyond the body. With intention, now fill up this beautiful space around your body, within your body. Let this energy have space to move so that it doesn't need to feel stuck, so that it doesn't need to feel like it's bouncing around, so that you don't have to experience it as anxiety. Say how, say how, and just sit for a moment. Let your body, let your energy, let your emotional field absorb this shift. Give yourself a little time and space. Let this energy reintegrate. Let this movement flow as it would like for the highest good. And to know that you can come back to this practice at any time. You have the tools now to energetically move that excess energy of anxiety all the way from the top of your head down through the body and out the feet. If you're in a safe space and you'd like to drift off into sleep or to an intuitive experience, you can allow yourself to do that now. If you're coming back to the rest of your day or evening, just very slowly, with reverence, move your body around a little bit. Just feel that beautiful body. Feel your knees, feel your feet, feel your ankles and your toes. Maybe you forgot they were there. Feel your pelvis, maybe do a little hip circle back and forth if that's accessible. Stretch your chest out a little bit. Roll your shoulders once or twice, just gentle movements here. Take one nice deep breath in through your nose, sigh it out with that audible ha sound. You deserve ease, you deserve calm. Anxiety does not need to control you. You can learn how to work with it energetically and, of course, with support of mental health professional, physiological help in the form of medications. Whatever works, use it. Sat Nam. The truth of your identity is that you are a beautiful being of energy, and the more you learn to work with that energy, the more joy and bliss you will find in your everyday existence. As you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me for this hopefully calming practice. I know I feel much calmer. I can tell I'm talking a lot slower. I can tell my mind has slowed down as much as I said my mental anxiety is gone. I feel more firmly connected to my body and to the earth. And this is that state in which you will find that joy and that bliss, being fully present in your body. Have a beautiful rest of your evening and week, and I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesdays.